In at 5, Cthulhu. Now you may be surprised to see Cthulhu at number 5, but as we proceed you'll see why. This fictional cosmic entity was first introduced in the short story The Call of Cthulhu, first published in Weird Tales in 1928. He is considered to be a great old one within the pantheon of Lovecraftian cosmic entities, and is depicted as a gigantic entity worshipped by cultists. His appearance is described as looking like an octopus, a dragon, and a caricature of a human form. It is an epic power that lies in a death-like slumber beneath the Pacific Ocean in a sunken city. As it stands, he remains a dominant presence in the eldritch dealings on our world. Now, it is unknown how large the throng of those who worship Cthulhu is, but his cult has many cells around the globe, and are known to chant the disturbing phrase. In his house at R'lyeh Dead, Cthulhu waits dreaming. Chills. Not only that, but Cthulhu has the ability to make people lose their minds by visual contact with the entity.
Next up at number 4, Groth, which kind of sounds like the sound you make when you do a sick burp, right? Groth, also known as the Harbinger, is an all-powerful outer god that floats without purpose across the endless cosmic abyss like some malevolent, omniscient nuclear karaoke ball. Groth is the size of a moon and coloured in a rusty shade of orange, all encompassed by an enormous, terrifying red eye, which often closes to avoid the detection of any nearby hostile entities. It has appeared twice in the Cthulhu mythos, first in the 1976 short story The Tugging by Ramsey Campbell, and later in 2004 in the Call of Cthulhu RPG game splat book The Stars Are Right. Groth spends eternity simply drifting throughout the cosmos, while terrifyingly singing its strange song, the music of the spheres. It serves a simple function. Whenever Groth nears a planet, any dormant great old one or outer god on the world will respond to its song and awaken, almost always resulting in the destruction of the planet, the annihilation of all life, or both. In one Lovecraftian instance, Groth was indirectly responsible for awakening the great old one known as the worm that gnaws in the night, who proceeded to consume the alien planet of Shagai from the inside out. Pretty metal, eh? Coming in at number 3, Shobnigarath. You betcha, aka the black goat of the woods with 1,000 young, an outer god who is the very definition of how messed up the Lovecraftian universe can get. Just like Lathotep, she is a perverse fertility deity responsible for belching forward some of the vilest creatures in the whole of the Cthulhu mythos. She appears as an evil cloud-like entity, an enormous mass which extrudes black tentacles, slime-dripping mouths, and more strangely than any other, short, writhing goat legs. She is the wife of the not-to-be-named one, don't ask, and the wife of Yogg who spawned forth the twins Nub and Yeb. Across the entire mythos, Shobnigarath is probably the most extensively worshipped by hundreds of twisted alien cultures and even druidic and barbaric cults on Earth. Her dark young are horrifying, pitch black monstrosities seemingly comprised of ropey tentacles who stand as tall as a tree on a pair of stumpy, you guessed it again, hoofed legs. Also, her milk, yes, you heard that correctly, her milk is often used in cult ceremonies, mutating those that drink it into fierce spawns of her brood. Nevertheless, she's seen as one of the most horrific creatures in horror fiction, being referenced several times by both Stephen King and Terry Pratchett, even making her way referentially into the Doctor Who universe. She's a pretty big deal, put it that way. Next up at number 2, Wilbur Waitley. This guy makes my number 2 spot simply because when I first read The Dunwich Horror, a short story by H.P. Lovecraft written way back when in 1928, for me, he was the most terrifying character throughout the whole damn thing, even more so than his twin brother, the titular Dunwich Horror, who, if we're being honest, was just the sad, misunderstood result of a mad woman and an outer god. Have some sympathy, guys. Wilbur Waitley was born in the rural town of Dunwich, Massachusetts, near the city of Arkham, where most Lovecraftian fiction takes place. The date of his birth was noted as the night before the hills rumbled and the dogs barked incessantly, which was telling because dogs continued to show an instinctual hatred for Wilbur the remainder of his life. Good job, doggos. We can always rely on you. Let's not glean over it. Wilbur Waitley was a pretty ugly dude. The reason being that, well, he was made up of outer godness. As a child, he was described as a dark, goatish looking infant and displayed an unnatural physical and mental development. He could walk unassisted at 7 months and talk at 11 months. At the age of 4, he began growing facial hair. If you've seen the 1970 B movie, then you'll know what we're getting at, because that final reveal where Wilbur disintegrates into the floor, yeah, that's not nice. And finally, at number 1, Nayar Lathotep. Because let's be real, no other entity in the Cthulhu mythos is as innately evil as our good old friend Dr. Nayar Lathotep. The big bad himself, the ancient evil that walks on two legs and has many names. The Black Wind, the Crawling Mist, the Haunter of the Dark, the God of the Bloody Tongue. You may not know it, but this guy is pretty much the culmination of every evil fictional overlord since his first appearance in Lovecraft's 1920 prose poem of the same name. He is a creature that carries many masks, but usually appears as a tall, handsome, joyous man with welcoming features. All of this is a ruse, however, as told in 1932's The Dreams in the Witch House. He has 1,000 other forms that will immediately invoke madness to whoever witnesses him. It's strange because out of most of the outer gods who are evil and all-powerful but never really demonstrate a clear purpose or agenda, Nayar Lathotep seems to be deliberately deceptive and manipulative, operating a clear agenda to achieve his twisted goals and making him the most human-like amongst all the outer gods. His one true goal is to spread madness, which is more enjoyable than death and destruction, and it is often suggested in the Cthulhu mythos that eventually he will destroy the entirety of the human race while laughing like a madman. Well, let's hope not, eh? Kicking off at number 5, Cthulhu. And what better way to start off this list than with the mother of all old gods herself, Cthulhu, also known as Cthulhu, or as a much more horrifying title, the birth womb of the great old ones. This twisted, pulsating mass of a mother was created by James Ambule, with its one and only appearance in the 1998 short story Correlated Contents, which makes the very little that we do know about it even more terrifying. It poses the question, what does this hulking cosmic entity have in store for us? Well, Cthulhu appears as a colossal conglomeration of innards spanning the size of a large planetary body. Imagine the planet Mars, but instead of a rocky desert-like surface, it's made up of skin and flesh and whatever else lies beneath. Cthulhu possesses a strange slimy outer surface covered in countless thousands of pulsating pustules, which in fact are biological incubators, each containing a great old one in its larval stage. Basically, each one of its warts contains a small, sprightly little baby Cthulhu, or worse, and it's currently unknown how often these entities reach maturity. Hopefully for us, it's not a regular occurrence. Gross, right? Next up at number 4, Cathilla. Also known as the Kraken or the Secret One, Cathilla is one of the twisted offspring of Cthulhu and Idya. She has the appearance of a gigantic, red-bodied, black-ringed and six-eyed octopus with small wings, so I guess she kinda takes after her father. Similarly, like Cthulhu, she can alter her body's proportions at will. Cathilla's first major appearance was in His Daughter's Darkling Womb, written by Tina Algens, where she was captured by marine researchers believing her to be a rare specimen of an undiscovered octopus species. Obviously, as you can imagine, it didn't go well. She also appears in The Hall of the Yellow King by Peter Rawlik in her humanoid form of a young girl as a possible bride for the unspeakable one, Hasta. The thing that makes Cathilla so important though, and the reason why she's so heavily guarded by her cultists and followers, is that should Cthulhu somehow die, his secret daughter Cathilla will give birth to him once again. How's that for a pushy parent? Coming in at number 3, Dagon. Also known as Father Dagon, this guy is pretty damn huge when it comes to fishy amphibious cults. Dagon is an enormous deity that presides over the deep ones, the fish-like race indigenous to the Earth's oceans, and the ones responsible for the weird goings on in Innsmouth, the basis for most of Lovecraft's fictional work. First seen in his titular short story, Dagon, he's mentioned extensively throughout the Cthulhu mythos, in the ranks of the Great Old Ones, alongside his consort and mate, Mother Hydra. He is worshipped by the esoteric order of Dagon, a shadowy cult based in Innsmouth that go to great lengths to maintaining the existence of their ocean-dwelling god. Make no mistake about it, Father Dagon is absolutely huge, dwarfing the size of ancient whales. While apparently immortal, his eternal lifespan may actually be attributed to his relationship with the Starspawn, a cosmic race of Cthulhu-like beings who sometimes select formidable specimens from a given species to protect, nurture, and empower for seemingly reasons known only to them. Swinging in at number 2, Gatunathola, aka the Dark God, or if you're being more precise, literally the most grotesque and ugliest creature in the entire Cthulhu mythos, and that's saying something. Gatunathola is the firstborn of Cthulhu, spawned by Idya on the planet Zoth, whose origin is first laid out in The Thing in the Pit by Lynn Carter. He is a huge amorphous monstrosity whose appearance is so hideous that anyone who gazes upon it is literally petrified into a living living cadaver. The victim is permanently immobilized, the body taking on the consistency of leather, yet the real kicker, their brain is preserved indefinitely and remains fully aware. Wow. What a way to go. The Dark God was brought to Earth from the planet Yogg, assisted by an ancient alien race, possibly the bug-like Mi-Go. On Earth they built a colossal fortress atop Mount Yadith-Go on the lost continent of Mu, and they sealed Gatunathola inside the mountain, where it remains to this day, worshipped by a strange secret cult. No thank you. And finally, at our number one spot, Hasta. And really, it has to be. Sorry. The Cthulhu mythos has no place for puns, especially when we're addressing the name of Hasta the Unspeakable, perhaps the most bleak and utterly evil entity in the entirety of Lovecraftian fiction. Him who is not to be named, the King in Yellow and the Yellow Sign. Although he is most famously associated with Lovecraft, Hasta is only ever mentioned once in The Whisperer of Darkness. He was originally a creation of Ambrose Bierce and also appears in the 1895 horror collection The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers. Hasta is defined as a great old one, but there is potentially much more to him. He is the spawn of Yogg and the half-brother of Cthulhu. He is also possibly the magnum in Ominandum, the overarching mystery of the Lovecraft mythos that culminates as the Nameless Mist. Hasta appears in several vile forms. The Feaster from afar, a black, shriveled, flying monstrosity dripping with tentacles tipped with razor-sharp talons that pierce a victim's skull and siphon out their brain. And also the King in Yellow, which was also referenced in the mesmerizing first season of True Detective. Time is a flat circle, check it out. Kicking off at number 5, Igolanak, a name that makes me realise the bizarre complexities of the Welsh language. Igolanak, also known as the Defiler, is one of the more nastier, shall we say, of the Great Old Ones. He's renowned as the god of perversion and depravity, and that's just not the human perception of taboo, but anything that can be conceived by a sane or otherwise sapient being. This guy is so ready to burst into the human plane and cause some disgusting chaos that merely speaking his name will usher him into our world, which I guess I better stop saying his name then. The Defiler's true form is uncertain, but when he possesses a human host, he appears as a grotesquely obese man, lacking a head and neck and a gaping mouth in the palm of each hand. He seeks those that read perverse and forbidden literature, offering the summoner the otherwise dubious honour of becoming his priest, or just simply eating them.
Coming at 4, Yogg. Yogg is a deity in the Cthulhu mythos and one of the great old ones who first appeared in the story The Curse of Yogg, which was originally created by Zelia Bishop before being completely rewritten by Lovecraft. Now in Lovecraft's story he is described as, I quote, "shapen like a man, except ye look at him close." According to Lovecraft, Yogg's main characteristics is his devotion to snakes, his children, and he punishes those that harm them by turning them into spotted snakes. He is the father of Yogg and the mate of the outer god Yidra. Now although Yogg is easy to anger, Yogg is also very easy to please as long as no harm comes to his children. Yes, he's a great dad. Number 1 dad. In at 3, Nayar Lathotep. Now this character not only appears in the works of Lovecraft but also many other writers, but is most commonly known in association with its role as a deity in the Lovecraft mythos fictional universe, where it is known as the Crawling Chaos. First appeared in Lovecraft's 1920 prose poem of the same name, and is described as one of the outer gods. Now Nayar Lathotep differs from other beings in a number of ways, with most of them being exiled to stars like Yogg and Hasta, or sleeping and dreaming like Cthulhu. However, the Crawling Chaos is active and walks the earth in the guise of a human being, typically tall, slim, and joyous. Someone like us. He is known to have had 1,000 other forms, most of them reputed to be maddeningly horrific. Now the other outer gods and great old ones are often described as mindless or unfathomable, rather than truly malevolent. However, this is not the case for this dude. He seems to truly delight in cruelty, is deceptive and manipulative, and even cultivates followers and uses propaganda to achieve his goals. Sounds like many politicians I know. In at 2, Yogg. Yogg is a cosmic entity and outer god born of the Nameless Mist. He is the progenitor of Cthulhu, Hasta the Unspeakable, and the ancestor of the Vor-Mi. Like many of our previous numbers, Yogg has many different appearances throughout the various stories, by various authors. However, there seems to be a common agreement that Yogg visually manifests as a mass of glowing orbs, with eyes or tendrils depending on which story you are reading. Now though it is not outright stated, it is heavily implied that Yogg is omniscient and is locked outside the universe, giving him the ability to see see all of space-time at once, meaning there is no secret hidden from him. Bad news bears. Now, this dude first appeared in Lovecraft's The Case of Charles Dexter Ward and goes on to be the driving force of the Dunwich Horror, in which he fathers twin children with a human. Dude gets around. What makes him truly menacing is that when called upon, he will assist mortals in performing occult deeds or rituals, with the most notable occurring in the previous mentioned stories. In the Dunwich Horror, he was summoned for the purpose of impregnating a human female, who then gave birth to two partially human children. The summoner was in fact the husband of the woman, who was known to stand on a hill in a circle of stones with the Necronomicon while shouting the name of Yogg from the summit. Folks be crazy. Finally coming in at number 1, Azeroth. Sometimes called the blind idiot god, the nuclear chaos, the demon sultan, the deep dark, and the cold one, this dude is yet again another outer god that we have on our list. Now, there can be no definite description of Azeroth, as everyone envisions him differently, and he is ever changing. He is a significant presence in the Necronomicon, as both Albert Wilmarth and Walter Gilman are horrified at the mere mention of his name. Now, it is in the dreams in the witch house where he is referenced by the witch, who tells Walter Gilman that, I quote, he must meet the Black Man and go with them all to the throne of Azeroth, at the center of the ultimate chaos. He must sign in his own blood the Book of Azeroth and take a new secret name. What kept him from going with her to the throne of chaos, where the thin flutes pipe mindlessly, was the fact that he had seen the name Azeroth in the Necronomicon and knew it stood for primal horror too horrible for description. He's the ruler of the outer gods, guys. You don't f with Azeroth.